Oh! Welcome to another episode of Howling with the Wolfe, y'all. End of November, early December. We're winding down towards NFL season. The weeks are starting to add up. It's week 13, I think. But yeah, we're going towards the fourth quarter of the season. A bunch to talk about this week. Thank you guys for joining me. As always, I'm Cameron Wolfe from ESPN, The Wolf. Hopefully, we can have a fun session. Hopefully, I provide some insight for you guys and give you some nuggets that you didn't know. So that's what I'm here for. As always, we're going to talk about a few topics I have on the top of the dome. I want to talk about Ryan Tannehill's return to action for Dolphins fans, Adam Gase's play calling in the last Colts game, and a look ahead to 2019 for the Miami Dolphins. It's getting around that time where one more loss, maybe two more losses, you got to look ahead to 2019. So we're going to look ahead to 2019. I'm going to talk and see if there's any hope for 2018 and the future of both Ryan Tannehill and Adam Gase. So I'll talk about that. Packed up lineup. As always, I'll take your questions, and I want to talk a little bit about the NFL as well. Thursday night game coming up for those who are watching me live. Dallas and New Orleans is a really good game. But I want to talk about some of the different takeaways I've taken from the first three quarters of the NFL season. So I see your comment, Jaconda. Yeah, I guess we were right. Tannehill looked pretty decent in his first return to action, I'd say, in my opinion. I was actually a little surprised, good for Tannehill. But that injury, I thought that he was going to be limited. He was going to, not be able to throw a certain length or whatnot. But he looked like a quarterback that hadn't really been injured. He looked very Ryan Tannehill-ish, So there is positives for the Dolphins that their season is going to be on the line of their franchise quarterback up until the season. His hands, and for better or for worse, he's going to either lead you to the playoffs and a surprise, or they're going to miss the playoffs again. So I think that we'll learn a lot about Ryan Tannehill over the last 5 games. I asked him this week a very important question that we're going to get into, and obviously he didn't like to hear the question, but it's worth asking. Is that is it fair to judge you? Is it fair for the Dolphins to judge you over your last 5 games? And he said, yeah, if you're on the field, you got to be evaluated. So I think it's our job, my job, to evaluate, see where the Dolphins are, and kind of make our observations of what the Dolphins should do, not only for 2019 but for their franchise's future. For those who read on ESPN, which I hope all of you guys do. I hope all of you guys do, but I'm having an article come out tomorrow morning on Ryan Tannehill, and should he stay? Should he go? I know it's a polarizing topic throughout the fan base. It's a polarizing topic throughout the media rooms that we discuss all the time. So I'm doing an article on that. Should Ryan Tannehill stay or go? Options. I've talked to a bunch of people, a bunch of insiders and I believe the experts, try to get their perspective. So it's a long read, but I hope you guys enjoy it. Did a lot of work on it, and I think it's going to give some insight of where the Dolphins are and where their franchise should move forward, particularly at the quarterback position. So that's something that that you should look out for in the morning. I'm also going to have a Xavier Howard story coming out soon on ESPN.com, just how productive he's been and what the Dolphins' future with him is. So those are 2 things to look at for me going forward, and a few long-term stories I'm working on as well. So as far as I see your question, Angela, Tannehill wasn't the issue. Suspect play calling, that almost defense struck again. I think we bounced back 9-7. Maybe we run the table. An optimistic Dolphins fan. I found an optimistic Dolphins fan. I've seen a lot of pessimism over the last few days. So it's always good to see when fans still have hope. I'm going to talk about hope later in this episode and whether you should have it or not, Angelo. So hang on, stay tight, and we're going to talk about that. Real briefly, to kind of go a little bit further on the element of Tannehill. I thought that he played well enough to win a game, and that's all you ask for your quarterback. Ryan Tannehill at this point is who he is. He's not going to blow up and give you 40, 50-point games. You scored 24 points against the Indianapolis Colts. You think that gives you a chance to win. So I don't blame Tannehill for the loss. I don't think anybody should blame Tannehill for the loss. And I think, Angelo, you hit it right on the money. If you're going to put blame on anybody for the loss, it's probably going to be Adam Gase play calling. Although, if you guys listen to Howling with the Wolf, you know I hate to blame play calling because I don't know more than Adam Gase. You don't know more than Adam Gase. So more times than not, they're right. But I think that there were a lot of questions that deserve to be asked about his 3rd and 10 plays and how he handled those last 8 minutes of that game. So we asked him this week, and we wrote about it. I wrote about it. So those are things that we addressed, and I think we just kind of got to move on. It happens. Wasn't maybe Adam Gase's best day on the show, and ultimately we may look back and say this Indianapolis game and that Cincinnati game probably defined the Dolphins season. So Adam Gase's play calling. I know people always blame play calling, and that seems to be the ultimate end all be all excuse for folks. I think that Adam Gase is traditionally a pretty strong play caller, an aggressive play caller, a guy who knows how to use weapons in the right way, as we saw with Albert Wilson early in the season. But over the last few weeks, I think that he has really struggled to figure out exactly how to make the offense work with the little weapons he has. The receiving core has been really banged up. Obviously, he had Brock Osweiler at quarterback for a while. So I think he's trying to adjust with having a lot less. And something that he didn't plan for. He planned for something completely different than he has right now. So I think that, for better or for worse, Adam Gase was saying we don't want to lose the game in this situation, and in turn, he decided not to win the game. So I'm always a play-to-win game guy, but ultimately I don't have the pressure on my shoulders that Adam Gase has to necessarily lead this franchise to greater pastures. So I kind of leave it at that. I think I kind of want to move on, and I think the next big topic I want to talk about, and Angelo alluded to it, is the element of hope. We sell hope in the media. I don't know if you guys noticed this little tidbit that, whenever we write draft period, always hope. No matter who you are, the Cleveland Browns, the Arizona Cardinals, the LA Rams, the Miami Dolphins, the Philadelphia Eagles, all those teams around draft time have the most interest than any other time of the year, because that's a time where they believe my franchise can be better than it was before, based on hope. So hope is a very important thing for a fan base. You don't want to be a hopeless fan base. So at 5-6, the Miami Dolphins have 5 games left. Should you have any hope? I think you should have little hope, but not no hope. And what I mean by that is that more likely than not, highly more likely than not, the Dolphins will not make the playoff. But there is hope, and I was actually in the locker room talking to Frank Gore about this, because believe it or not, players do not look at and stare at the standings like you and I and everybody else does. That does not happen for most players. Some do. But Frank Gore's like, hey, man, how's it looking on our playoff chances? I'm like, I ain't even going to lie to you, dog. It's not looking great. Our ESPN FPI has them at 2%. But there is a path. The path, and I'm selling hope to you guys for a little bit, just for 30 seconds. You beat Buffalo. You beat Buffalo twice. You beat Jacksonville. Both manageable teams given where they are and the way they're playing. And you find a way to beat either Minnesota in Minnesota or New England back in Miami, where you've won 4 out of your last 5. The Minnesota game and the New England game, obviously, are the 2 games where you're like, how are we going to win? And I don't have any answers for you, but that is the path. If you go 4-1 the last 5 games, you're 9-7, you got a chance to make the playoffs, and a pretty decent chance given the wild card race. So that's your path. Little hope, but not no hope. That's my thought on 2018 hope. If they lose to Buffalo, throw that little hope away, and you have no hope, and you should prepare for who is going to be the Dolphins starting quarterback in 2019, which is a topic I'm also going to talk about on this session. So I think that this game is not very interesting from a national perspective, but for Dolphins fans' perspective who have that slim hope, it is very important. So another question from Angelo. We need to reproduce that 2016 run game that was power running Ajayi. You said Gore shots down the field. I think you meant Drake and Gore or Ajayi and Kingdom Drake. But yeah, we still have Stills, decent, not great. The thing about the 2016 Dolphins, and I wasn't here in 2016 for the Miami Dolphins, but the thing about that team was, from what I was told and what I've looked at, is that they they were able to get on a run, and they were able to get a lot of things flowing when their talent may not have added up to their production. They also had a schedule that was manageable, like the Dolphins have now. But the Dolphins have never got that consistent role. They haven't won 2 games in a row since September. They've lost 4 out of their last 5 games, and they're going downhill after a strong start. So I think that '08 Miami Dolphins team, what I remember, had a different level of like how can I say it? I hate using the word culture, but had a different level of continuity, where they may have felt like um, the confidence was rolling, where this team had to go through 5 games of Brock Osweiler just trying to keep their head above water. And I think that really hurt the rhythm for that team. So I think that's what you can look at it, the 2016 team versus the 2018 team. And obviously, this team does not look to have as great of a finish as that other team did. I have a question from Jason Wedgwood that says, "Has Cameron disappeared to check on Ted Larson? Did I go anywhere?" No, I think I'm still here. Ted Larson is not playing. I don't really. Ted Larson's not playing right now because Jake Brendel is outplaying him. Simply, that's really what it is at this point. Jake Brendel's outplaying him at guard, and I think that you probably see some Ted Larson this week if Travis Swanson can't go at center. So, simple answer to that question. And then I had a question coming in from a Twitter user who wanted to ask about Miami's defense, and the question essentially was, have you seen a defense that's giving up this type of passing yards and passing touchdowns, easy passing yards and passing touchdowns this game? On the blame train for last game, a lot of people are trying to figure out where to put the blame at. The defense is one area where they have blame. They are second in interceptions and third in takeaways, but they've really struggled in different areas as far as yardage, as far as running game, as far as getting off the field. So those elements came back to bite them. I think the issue is that one, they have holes in particular areas like linebacker, like D line, and they're starting to put a smorgasbord of players together who haven't really had the great fit. Like, they have 2 strong safeties and Rashad Jones and T.J. McDonald, and Minka Fitzpatrick playing corner when he's really outside corner, when he's really probably a slot corner or a hybrid defensive back. And that's really where they are defensively, and they're not getting pass rush from a unit that's getting paid 3 of their top 5 players that are getting played at defensive end. So I think those are the issues on the defense side of the ball, and those aren't going to be fixed into the offseason. So I'm actually going to take a tour. I'm going to detour a little bit, talk a little bit about the NFL as a whole. For those of you who are Dolphins fans, stick with me. We're going to circle back to Dolphins towards the end of the episode, where I'll give you my prediction and my X factors, and I'll talk a little bit about the future of Adam Gase and Ryan Tannehill. But I want to talk about the NFL as a whole, and where I am with the things that have sort of stood out to me. Looking at the NFC side, because I'm very interested in what happens on that side of the ball. I'm very interested in what happens between the Saints, the Rams, who I think are the 2 best teams in football right now, the Saints and the Rams, and the other contenders that come and pop up, whether it's the Bears, whether it's the Vikings, whether it's the trio in the NFC East of the Cowboys, the Redskins, and the Eagles. Who comes out of that NFC? Like I told you guys last week for my Super Bowl pick, I got the Rams right now. Sean McVay, Coach of the Year, incredible job out there. And but the Saints, man, they are looking special with Drew Brees, with everything flowing with that offense. So I'm very interested to see what they do. And Thursday Night Football, I'm going to tune there after I get off of this chat and see exactly what's going on with that Saints team. So the MVP race is really intriguing for me. Like I mentioned, Drew Brees is right in the thick of things. Patrick Mahomes is in it as well. Todd Gurley is in that race. Phillip Rivers deserves to be in that race. A lot of guys deserve to be in that race. So I think that I'm very interested in seeing how that ends up overall. So I think these next few weeks, for those fantasy football owners going into the playoffs, I am in the playoffs in one of my leagues, and I'm very excited because I think I got a chance to win it all. I won both of my leagues last year, and I think I got a chance to win it again. So, if you guys have any fantasy questions or any fantasy things, fire them away on these chats, not on Twitter, but on these chats, and I'll try to give you my tidbits. And as always, any other questions that you want to have during this chat, fire them on this panel, and I'll go ahead and attack them. And if not, then I'm going to go ahead and move on and talk a little bit about the future of Ryan Tannehill and Adam Gase. And we'll talk about this throughout the rest of this upcoming month and into the offseason. But I want to touch a little bit about a few nuggets that are on my mind for the question, and I'll give you a little preview of the article that I'm writing tomorrow on Ryan Tannehill and should he stay or go. There are two questions that typically come up when you ask should Ryan Tannehill stay or go, and shout out to Cougs. One, who replaces him? And I think that this is the most common refrain when you ask about Ryan Tannehill. Who's going to ultimately replace him? The options in the draft are not necessarily plentiful. This is not the hottest draft coming up. A few names: the Oregon's Justin Herbert, West Virginia's Will Grier, Missouri's Drew Lock, Ohio State's Dwayne Haskins, Duke's Daniel Jones. Those are a few names, and I'll actually talk about those and get a scouting report from those from ESPN's Dan Orlovsky in my article tomorrow, so look for those. But those are your draft options right now. And then you're looking at free agency options. Probably Teddy Bridgewater is the only one that makes sense as a possible upgrade. And then maybe you're looking at trade market for a guy like Derek Carr if he's available, or Matthew Stafford. So those are the potential options. All of those have their flaws. All of those have their costs. And you have to ask yourself, are any of those for certain better than Ryan Tannehill? There's a couple in the trade market that are. In the draft, you're probably playing the long game. And, that's sort of where you are. So I think that that's the first question. The second question is, what do you feel like Ryan Tannehill is going to be going forward, and can you trust him to lead you to where you want to be? And I think this is an Adam Gase question, and I have this sentence in my story there that I'll give you guys a peek at. Adam Gase has been adamant that Ryan Tannehill, and he believes in him, and that he believes that he should he should be defended, and he's a starting quarterback, and these sort of things, and that he believes that he hasn't reached the ceiling yet. I think that's a really interesting comment for a 30-year-old quarterback who's playing in his seventh season. And I'm not saying that Adam Gase is wrong about this, but how long do you wait on Ryan Tannehill to be something different than what he's already shown? And I think ultimately that's a question that Adam Gase will have to ask himself this offseason, that Mike Tannenbaum, Chris Grier will have to answer. And if all those guys are back, or if they're not, the next person might have to answer them. And that makes a decision on what you do at your quarterback position going forward, because you can't continue to do the same thing and hope for different results. That's just not how businesses work. That's not how teams work. And I think ultimately Adam Gase will have to answer that question, and whether he's willing to bet his job on that. So that's where I think it is. My opinion of what I would do, just for you Howling and Wolfe viewers, is I would keep Ryan Tannehill for 2019. But I would draft a quarterback in the first round, have them compete, and whenever the young quarterback's ready, he takes over for Tannehill, and then I make a decision on Tannehill in 2020, most likely releasing him or trading him in that season. My reasoning is because you're going to have to bring in a veteran quarterback regardless if you draft one, and Tannehill knows the scheme, so you can at least compete with him and have him more comfortable, and have him as someone who can teach the scheme to a young player, rather than bringing in an outside candidate like a Teddy Bridgewater or Eli Manning or Matt Stafford, or somebody who, if you don't feel like they're your future, then why would you pay all that premium for a placeholder? So that's my thought. I know a lot of people think, hey, just get rid of Ryan Tannehill. But I think that you can create a smooth transition if Ryan Tannehill is willing to compete for his job. And if he's as much of a competitor as his teammates and his coach swears he is, good Lord, then I believe that he will be willing to fight for his job. So you don't guarantee the rookie the job. You don't guarantee Ryan Tannehill the job, but you let him fight, and the best quarterback wins, and ultimately you have your quarterback of the future. Ideally, you have a situation like Baltimore has, with Lamar Jackson and Joe Flacco, where eventually Lamar Jackson seems like he'll be the guy there. And it may be now. Maybe Joe Flacco never comes back. So I think that's a very comparable situation to what Miami has. And whether it's the first round, the second round, I think you should draft a quarterback you believe is going to be your future. So that's my thought on that. As for Adam Gase, I think that he deserves another year. I think he should get one more year. Ideally, in my situation, with a young quarterback that he can groom, and then you evaluate him after the 2019 season. He did make the playoffs in 2016, and I think that he's shown enough elements, particularly with the talent level they have on this roster, to show that he deserves another year. So that's my thoughts on both of those players, and we'll see how those develop as we go along for the next few weeks. But for you viewers, that's kind of where I am opinion-wise on those two players. So really quick, I want to talk about my X factors and my prediction. X factors for this game. Number one, and for those you guys don't know, I have a nickname for this player that I've been saying around the media room. Mike Gesicki, Frogger. Frogger because he hops in and out of traffic all the time. That's his only move. I don't know if he likes that nickname. Probably not. But that's my nickname for Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki, second round pick, Mike Gesicki. It's time for you to show up. You haven't showed up all season in a big way. You had a huge fumble last week that cost your team potentially some more points. You're playing a team in the Buffalo Bills this week. You need to find a way to get some offense. You're already down another receiver in Jakeem Grant, probably another receiver in Danny Amendola this week. What are you going to do? I know that it's big boy football. I know you struggle a little bit with the physicality. But Mike Gesicki, this is your time to show, hey, I can still make an impact on the Miami Dolphins this season. So Mike Gesicki is my X factor. I want to see Mike Gesicki go out there, get several catches, break a tackle, make himself known, make himself a red zone threat, and threaten himself within the Miami Dolphins offense. So he is my number one X factor in this game. Mike Gesicki, show me what you got. Show it. It's about that time. It's about that time. Show me what you got. My number two X factor on this game, and as always, I put somebody on the other side of the ball as far as the other team. Dolphins defensive lineman Jordan Phillips. If you guys are Dolphins fans, you remember Jordan Phillips as the guy who had a little sideline tirade and ended up being released a few days later. Palm Beach Post, Jason Leisure wrote a story talking to Jordan Phillips today, and Jordan Phillips said obviously there was some bad blood there. He hasn't talked to Adam Gase since he left. They weren't on great speaking terms, and that he's going make those people hurt on the other side of the ball inside those numbers. So Jordan Phillips, this is a big game for you personally. What are you going to do, and how did the Dolphins combat an angry and with plenty to prove Jordan Phillips? So I think that element is going to be an X factor as well, and something to watch continually on the other side of the ball. Number three, my final X factor for this game is Leonte Carroo. Leonte Carroo made a big splash last week against the Colts with a 74-yard reception. Just mossed, good Lord, a Colts defender for a nasty TD. Really impressive, impressed a lot of coaches. And if Danny Amendola is out, which is the way it's looking like at this point on Thursday, then you're going to see a lot more of Leonte Carroo. He's going to play a lot more snaps. Third-round pick in 2016. He has a chance to rewrite his career. What does Leonte Carroo do as an encore? Third X factor, I want to see Leonte Carroo get a lot more burn and have contributions representative of his draft status. So those are my three X factors. And we're back in the win column for the Cameron predictions for the Dolphins. 20-16, low-scoring game. I think the defense confuses Josh Allen for a turnover or two, maybe three, and that gets him enough for the win. So that's my predictions for this game. As always, thanks for joining me. We'll be back here next week. Share this with your fans, family. Share this with your friends, fellow Dolphins fans, and we're going to get this Howling with the Wolf chat continue to roll throughout the season. So thanks as always, and see you guys later.